Tonight, the Racin Nation Radio Network is proud to bring you a very special broadcast of the Racin Nation Report, as we'll spend 2 hours with two legendary NASCAR characters who truly have been through and seen it all. They'll have stories, anecdotes, and the real tales of the early years of hardcore NASCAR racing as we welcome Tiger Tom Pistone and Humpy Wheeler to the Racin Nation microphones for an unforgettable reunion. It's right here and it's right now on this landmark episode of the Racin Nation Report. This commercial-free broadcast is brought to you by Snafu Seasoning. It's the missing ingredient. And now, ladies and gentlemen, your hosts for this spectacular show, Benny Fry and Daryl Stoops.
And thank you for joining us on this special edition of the Racin Nation Report. Hi, I'm Benny Fry, and with me is Daryl Stoops. Hey, Daryl.
Hey, Benny. I'm all excited over here about this.
Yeah, this is it, man. This is the first special we've ever done. We've never done this before, and to have with us Tiger Tom Pistone and Humpy Wheeler as well. We're still waiting on Humpy to call in, so we've got Tiger Tom here, and I'm going to tell you first. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tiger Tom. And I'm basically going to read something here, and if I sound like I'm reading, it's because I probably am. Tiger Tom Pistone is a former NASCAR Grand National driver from Chicago, and I love this man's story. It's part of NASCAR history. He made his Grand National debut in 1955, won 2 races that year, finished 6th in championship points in 1959, driving for Carl Rupert. He was away from NASCAR in 63 and 64, returned in 65 to drive 33 races for Glenn Sweet and Emery Gilliam. I guess that's Gillen. A career high at that time. His final and 130th Cup race came in 1968. He won 2 NASCAR convertible division races before they shut that down. They used to run convertible races. A lot of people don't even know that. In October 17th, 2010, Pistone was one of the year's 15 inductees to the Racers Reunion Hall of Fame located in Memory Lane Museum in Mooresville, North Carolina. I drive by that all the time. And this was interested, still active in racing at age 81. Pistone has a thriving race car parts business in Charlotte, North Carolina, and can often be found mentoring young drivers at Charlotte Motor Speedway. He prepares crews for several Legends and Bandolero drivers in the Winter Heat and Summer Shootout series. And also his grandson, Chase Pistone, races in the Camping World Truck Series. And we talked about with him earlier on our show last week that in April 2011, Pistone appeared on an episode of the History Channel's American Pickers, which he sold items to be placed in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And that's just skimming the top of Tiger Tom's career. And let's go ahead and bring him on and chat with him a little bit, Daryl. There we go.
Hello, Tiger.
Hey, Tiger.
Yeah, I'm on. You have to correct that. It's 85. Born on St. Patrick's Day, Italian. Born on St. Patrick's Day.
85. St. Patrick's Day, an Italian. Okay, so it's not 81. It's 85.
Right.
If that's all I got wrong, I done good.
You're done good. You're done good, Benny.
Man, we appreciate you coming on tonight and taking a little time to sit here and talk with us. Let me ask you the first question. Is Humpy usually late?
Well, did you guys forget to send a check or what?
Yeah, it might have been.
He does not appear. He does not appear. We call it in our day deal money. DEAL, deal money.
Well, I just sent Tori an order for some rolls of toilet paper, so we'll see if that gets him on the line.
Oh, that'll definitely sell. Yeah.
I'm not going to comment on that one. I'm going to stay clear of that one. Don't know Humpy that well.
Well, if you didn't mail the check, he's not going to call in.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to double. We'll have our staff checking on that while we're chatting.
Okay.
All right, man. Well, I tell you what, you can tell us how you met Humpy, and when Humpy gets in, maybe we can hear it from the other side. When did you first meet Humpy? What was he doing? What were you doing at that time? How did that come about?
Tiny Lund and I were running sportsman's cars, which today they call Nationwide cars. And Humpy Wheeler was the director of Firestone Racing Division. And he used to supply me and Tiny with tires, free.
Uh-huh.
And that's the only way we operated.
Right.
Tiny helped me and Tiny quite a bit on that subject. And we used to test these tires for Humpy and then come back and give him the results. But when we used to get these racetracks, these drivers used to get mad at me and Tiny because they never saw tires like that. You know, we had special tires we had. You know, and that's how I met Humpy.
So he supplied tires, and you basically were giving him results of your runs with them tires. So you were kind of a consultant, basically, in a way. You were kind of a tire consultant for Firestone in that regard.
Well, at that time we didn't know what that name meant. All we know is that he helped us quite a bit. See, then Humpy. He formed this Legends car division, you know, the Bandoleros and the Thunder Roasters.
Right.
And Harvey Walters, that was working for him, he asked Humpy to hire me. So Humpy calls me. This is about 23 years ago. And he calls me and he says, meet me at the Speedway. So I meet him at the Speedway on the racetrack, and I couldn't believe what he did to me. He knighted me. You know what I'm talking about, knighted? He had me on my knees. He had me on my knees, and he knighted me as a director of Racin. I was in charge of the Legend Racing. I'm the guy that made all the rules up. Can you imagine that? I made the rules.
You made the rules, Sir Tiger.
Yeah, right. The cheapest guy in the world making rules.
Well, you know, they made Gary Nelson when they hired Gary Nelson as the what is he, director of competition or
director of
or whatever.
competition.
That's kind of that's kind of what they did when they hired Gary Nelson, didn't it?
Well,
I mean,
you ever heard the word?
That,
you heard the word? To catch a thief, you have to be a thief. See, so they hired Gary Nelson because he knew how to cheat. And he knew all the rules. I won't call it innovating. It's cheating, and he knew all of them. Do you remember the first race when he became director at Daytona, and he disqualified Felix Zapata because that was his former car owner, because he knew everything that was wrong in that car. And I think that Cuban wanted to send him back to Cuba. Wanted to send Gary Nelson.
I bet he did. I bet he was sweating when he found out that Nelson was appointed in that position. I bet he started sweating then.
How stupid can you get? Why would you come to the racetrack with a car that's illegal when he knew he knew everything that was illegal on the car? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, Gary Nelson put NASCAR where it's at today, but now we got to get it back to where it used to be. See, he brought it to a high class. He brought to the high class. Now we got to get rid of that high class stuff.
Hey, Tiger, you mentioned Tiny a lot, and tell us a little bit about him. What your relationship is? If I understand correctly, he's probably your best friend.
Oh yeah, him and Larry Frank. See, Larry Frank was an Indian, full-blooded Cherokee, and Tiny Lund was 6'5", 6'6", or something like that. And
big boy.
And we used to go out drinking together, the three of us. And when I drank, I felt like Rocky Graziano, but I couldn't fight like Rocky Graziano. So I hung around with Tiny and Larry Frank, and they did all the fighting.
I understand. He used to pick you up and turn over and head first into the garbage cans, huh?
Oh, that was his famous trick. The best one. You want to hear this one? I mentioned last time, about a month ago on a radio show. We're at Macon, Georgia, and it's a sportsman race. They had two 100-lap races they had there, and the first 100-lap races, Tiny led the race, and he kept blocking me, and I kept banging him, body slamming him. I did everything to try to get by him. So what happened? They had a big wreck in the backstretch, and they red flagged the race. So I'm sitting in my car, and all of a sudden I hear a click, 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 click. He unbuckled me, pulled me out of the car, had me upside down, shaking me with my legs, and he says, "You hit me one more time, you little whop, I'm going to kill you." So he won that race, and the next race I beat him. The next race.
And he did that, and y'all were friends.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all were friends, and he did that to you. Okay. So if he didn't like you, no telling what he would have done to you.
Oh, no. You know, one time I remember at Jacksonville, Florida, he had Leroy Yarbrough on the ground, and he was going to punch the heck out of him. And he went down with his fist, and it's a good thing that Leroy Yarbrough moved his head, and Tiny missed and broke his hand. He hit the ground. Can you imagine Tiny hitting Leroy on the ground in his head? Can you imagine what would happen to his head? Oh, yeah, that's a true statement. That's a true statement.
Wow.
But Tiny was a big baby. He was a big baby, you know. But you don't mess with him. We found that out.
Yeah.
Well,
Benny, we got Humpy on the line.
Oh, yeah, he must have got the check. Ask him.
Yeah. Hey, Humpy, did you get my check?
Yeah, I got Tom's check, but it bounced.
Humpy, don't cash it. Don't cash it, Humpy.
Folks, if you hadn't caught on, we now have Humpy Wheeler on the line, and of course everybody knows Humpy Wheeler, best known as to NASCAR fans as president of CMS for many years, and now he's he's one of the foremost promoters of NASCAR ever, and now he heads up the Speedway Benefits Program. And he's on the line with us, as well as Tiger Tom Pistone, if you're just tuning in. Humpy, good to have you in, man. Thanks for calling.
Well, good. We talk about checks bouncing and stuff, but, you know, Bobby Isaac, who is a wonderful, wonderful friend of mine, and one of the best race drivers that ever got on any track, he comes in my office one day, and he says, this is after he retired from his terrible problem at Talladega, where he was going down the backstretch. This is the former Cup champion, and he said somebody told him to pull in. Now, Talladega is a weird place, as Tom knows.
Right.
There's a lot of really, really bizarre things have happened down there. I mean, bizarre. You know, poor Richard Petty's brother-in-law gets killed on pit road. Friday, whose mother got killed down there in the walking down in the infield? Was it Friday Hassler?
I don't know. I don't remember that one.
He got killed, and then he got killed later on there. Or no, he got killed in Atlanta. But somebody else of prominence got killed there, and of course, Tom's great friend Tiny Lund got killed there, which nobody can kill Tiny. I don't think he's dead. I think he's out there in the woods somewhere. But at any rate, Bobby was very superstitious.
Oh, yeah.
And he pulls in. Nobody ever done this. You know, and the NASCAR officials very pompously there, wanting to know what happened to your car. And usually some guy, if a guy's ever scared, he always says the right front's vibrating.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right.
He said, God told me to pull off this racetrack.
That's 100% right.
He did. He was serious. He jumped in his car. I think, was it Bud Moore's car owner, Tiger?
Wasn't that Harry Hyde's car, wasn't it?
Harry Hyde, that's right.
Yeah, Harry Hyde.
Fastest his car down there, okay?
Oh, yes.
He takes off. He leaves Talladega doesn't even nod, and he's going to the infield. He drives, 382 miles back to Catawba, North Carolina, north of Charlotte.
Right.
And so he comes. He that literally retired him from racing. But after a while, the itch got into him, and Hickory Speedway, not far from him.
Yeah, I built the car.
Mm-hmm. And Tom built him a car.
Yep.
He's running the car. So he comes to my office, and he says, I'm getting rid of everything that says Talladega on it. I said, why? Now, you got to remember that in '69, we had a driver strike, and it was a strike, period.
Right.
And all the top drivers said, we're not racing, except for Bobby.
Yeah.
He was the only factory car that wasn't racing. There were like 20 factory cars running.
Right.
He's the only one that raced. So Bill France, having a real hookup with Rolex, I'm talking about France Sr., gave him a Rolex watch, even though Bobby said they got the pole and led the race for a long time, but something happened, the engine blew or something. At any rate, he gave him this nice Rolex. Bobby never put it on. On the back of it, it said Talladega 500. Winners never quit. Quitters never win. Talladega 500, 1969. So he walks over and he said, "No, you'd like that, because he always heard me talking about, I like to have, I'd like to have a Rolex." He said, "Here's a chance to get one," and I forget what he told me he wanted it for. I never even asked, and it wasn't a whole lot, but I mean it was a, Rolex. So Bobby Isaac being Bobby Isaac, he walks behind my desk, opens my drawer, and drops it in there and turns around and leaves. 22 minutes later, I get a call from Tiger. Bobby says you owe him so much money.
That's right.
So I said, what the hell am I going to do? I mean, I may as well buy this damn watch. I'll never see it again. So I bought the watch. Well, quite a few months, whatever, later, I'm in bed at home, Charlotte. Ned Jarrett calls me. This is like 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, Ned's not a drinking man, so he didn't call you 2 o'clock in the morning to talk about the latest Jack Daniels. He said, and he was the promoter at that time of the Hickory Speedway.
Yes.
Where Bobby was running a race that night. He says, Bobby is dead.
Right.
I said, oh, my God, what are you talking about? I thought he'd been in a wreck. No. And he told me a very bizarre story. He said Bobby was racing, and wasn't it 400 laps, Tiger?
It was a Hickory Speedway, yeah. Yeah, it was a big race.
Yeah, it was a 400-lap race, though. It was a race you really didn't want to go to,
Right.
Just 400 friggin' laps, So
yeah.
It was so hot that day, it blistered paint. So Bobby working on a car all day. He gets in the car and running at night, and he had an exhaust leak. I don't care what anybody says, where do they say it. He's choking on that damn carbon monoxide. Now, I don't know how many laps it was from there. How many laps was it when he got out of the car, Tiger?
I think it was halfway.
Halfway.
Yeah.
And he's getting dizzy and he can't function and all that. And the car's, very inconsistent. So he pulls in. He gets out of the car and falls down.
Right.
And they put Bosco Low in the car.
Right.
Well, Bosco just about passed out after a few laps in the car, too, because I think he had a loose exhaust manifold, didn't he?
Yep, you're right.
Okay. So now Bobby's passed out. You can't get on the tunnel at Hickory, so you got to get him out of there. And so
Right.
they stopped the race. And they hauled him to the hospital, Hickory. And Ned was concerned about Bobby because, like myself and Tom, he was a good friend.
Right.
So you always follow him to the hospital. And so we get up there. He gets up there, and Bobby woke up. And he says, give me a Coca-Cola. I'm thirsty. So the nurse gave him a Coca-Cola. I don't know if that was the best thing he could do. And he drank it, and after he got through with it, he died. Well, they tried to paint the picture of he had heart failure.
No.
No, of course he didn't have heart failure.
No.
What do you think it was, Tom?
Seizure.
Exactly.
Seizure. I heard that he was an epileptic. I heard.
Yeah.
Well, now, I heard that he swallowed his tongue that night, if I'm not mistaken, Humpy.
Well, that's interesting because regardless, when I went up to Linda's house with Ned the next morning.
Right.
And that was his wife, beautiful girl. And I said, Linda, we went up there for one purpose. We wanted them to do an autopsy because a lot of weird things were happening to race drivers at the time.
Right.
And she just refused. And then I offered her to give her that Rolex back, which she did not want. She said, Bobby, I always wanted you to have that Rolex, and I want you to keep it. Okay.
Right.
So I put it away. But I've always been mystified at what happened there because, I always thought Bobby was about half Catawba Indian,
yes,
and half Scotch-Irish, came from the sawmill person.
Right.
And, he did not know how to read or write until he got on the circuit. And a lady that Tom Pistone knows real well, Mary Bruner, taught him how to read and write.
Right.
But he was extremely intelligent. And
you're right.
He knew when to stop something and when to turn it back on. But also, he was, without a doubt, one of the best race drivers we ever had. And you got to remember, Tom Pistone and Bobby Isaac and Junior Johnson and Ned Jarrett and Fireball and all those guys were absolute pioneers in those days of getting on those big, fast super speedways. Nobody knew what was going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a very dangerous time, terribly dangerous. Guys were getting killed. It was, Fireball exploded his car in 64 in Charlotte. Just a lot of bad things happened. So the fact that these guys stayed in their cars during that time was pretty incredible when you think of all the mayhem that was going on. But anyway, poor Bobby died. We'll never know truly exactly what happened, but I think Tom and I pretty much know.
Right.
And, it wasn't the curse of Talladega, although being down there was not a good thing.
No.
And but talking about that, now you were his very dear friend. Where were you when Tiny got killed?
I was at the night before. See, Tiny and I, we were mad at each other for over some Pensacola deal. So that night, Tiny came to Hickory that Saturday night, and we made up. He gave me some spindles and he gave me some hubs, and we made up. And next thing I knew, he took off and he went to Talladega. He got killed in the car that he used to drive years ago. You remember that, what was it, King car?
Oh, yeah.
That's the car he got killed in. I couldn't believe it. We just made up after that. My daughter, Crystal, was at Hickory that night when Bobby had that seizure.
Oh, she was?
Yeah, my daughter says she was there, and she said she saw it. Yeah, she saw it.
Wow.
Yep.
Well,
wow.
Yep.
There were, as Tom knows, some bizarre things go back in that time. The 60s was a horrific, bloody, terribly awful time in racing, and I hope we never have anything like it again. And, there's no question about it. It led to the early retirement of Ned and Junior Johnson. And the incredible thing about it was I was up in Indianapolis for qualifying, working for Firestone, when Fireball was killed. Not killed that day, but he had that terrible wreck at Charlotte.
Right.
They were having qualifying at Indy, and Smokey Unick had brought that sidecar up there, and only Smokey could get away with something like that.
Yeah.
And guy was sitting outside the car in between the left two wheels, left front and left rear.
Right.
And I said, Smokey, what? How do you steer this thing? And he showed me the whole deal and everything. And to being typical Smokey, he got away with it. But at any rate, poor Bobby crashed in qualifying. Now, this is the weird part. Right after I got back in the gasoline alley, I get a call from Max Molman in Charlotte. And he said, hey, he says, I got to tell you, he says, Fireball's been in a horrific crash, and we don't think he's going to live past today. Oh, my God. So I had to go up and tell Smokey. Well, I got up to his garage area, and, you know, as Tom knows, everything up there is enclosed.
Right.
You'd have loved that if you'd had a whole career in a closed friggin' garage. That's
yeah.
what we've done. So we're going to trade cars today. We've qualified one. We're going to qualify the next one. He's going to put different numbers on the same car.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right.
The guys up there said, don't go in there. All the crew guys were outside. Why? Well, I knew why. Smokey was in there brooding over his wreck. Now I got to go talk to him. So I went in there, and he gave me an evil eye look. I was Smokey. Look, you need to know this. And I told him about Fireball. Well, it was too much for him to take in one day. So that's the kind of thing that went on back in those days, where you got bad news a lot of times. Now, thank goodness there's no bad news rolling around today. I don't know the last time we had any bad news, and in NASCAR, it's been quite a while, and
that's a good thing.
So that's good that we don't we can't go through all that. But now, Tom, you certainly remember all that time. What was going through your mind as a driver then?
Well, it was rough in them days because, like I told the guys earlier, Humpy, when you were charged with a Firestone Racing division, you would give me and Tiny Lund tires to run, and we had tires that nobody else had. When we went to the racetrack, these guys said, where'd you get the tires? And we could have never made it back then. You used to give me and Tiny 8 tires per race, you used to give us. And then we'd come back and give you the results. It was rough. There was no money. And then you talk about the nationwide races, why the Cup drivers run nationwide. Humpy, you know why me and Tiny ran the Sportsman. They paid us deal money, and it was easy money for us. But today, I think it's wrong that the Cup drivers run that nationwide.
It's awful because what happens is at Charlotte on Saturday, and you remember this, we used to get 70,000 real people for the 300 milers. Today, they'll be lucky Friday night at Darlington to have 15,000 paid. Charlotte will be lucky to have 18,000 paid. And it's because the show's gone, because Harry Gant could run his car Saturday night at Hickory.
Hickory, right.
Take it to Robert G's, let him slick the body up, and come down to Charlotte the next week and run competitively, if not win the race.
Exactly.
Now, that was drama. When you got a bunch of Cup drivers in the latest you-know-what, that's not drama.
Right.
And, you got Ricky and the Dillon boys and all this other kind of stuff running, but they've got cars that are as good as the Cup guys. They just don't have the experience.
Exactly.
But a poor guy like, I tell you, Tom, I asked A.J. Foyt 2 years ago when I went up to Indy for the race because I hadn't been there in a while. I said, what would you do today if you were 19 years old? Now, I remember him when he was 19 years old. He's just like Tom Pistone and me. We didn't have a darn.
Right.
And he was trying to run his dad's car out of Midget out of Houston, and they had no money. And AJ said, I couldn't race. There's no way I could race. I would never have made it to Indy. because I didn't look right. When he did look, he was a pretty good-looking guy.
Right.
But what he was talking about was that Texas twang. And, AJ never put on any airs. He just called a spade a spade.
Right.
And today's sponsors would not have liked that. So we would have lost one of the great race drivers we ever had by not having him in there. I know I used to sit up there before the race started at Charlotte and look down there and think, hey, we got a sold-out crowd, and we sold 24 600s out. And look down there and think, are these the best race drivers possible down there in those cars to give these people the best show they could? Now, I'm not talking about all 43. We know that's not going to happen. But do we have the 20 best? No. Because not the 20 best, some of them are sitting up in the cornfields of Iowa.
Right.
Their teeth aren't right. They don't dress right. They don't talk right. And they could have never gotten a sponsor today. And that's a really, really bad thing because it takes all the color out of what we're doing.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of what's wrong. I mean, I to get you one thing. Tom Pistone right now, if we could resurrect you, Tom, and bring you back to 22 or 3 and stick you in one of those cars, the world would have an absolute fit. Because here's a guy from Chicago, wisecracking and all that kind of stuff, and a real character, and my God, the people would love it. And that's what's missing today.
Right.
Tiny Lund's missing today.
Right.
Curtis
Joe
Turner's
Weatherly.
missing today.
Joe Weatherly.
Well, Joe Weatherly is the biggest scar down the side of his face. Where'd he get that scarf? Where'd that guy get his scarf? He's a motorcycle racer. Oh, my God. People love that kind of stuff,
That's right.
Not there. It's just not there.
Nope, you're right.
Guys, we got a caller on the line. Let's take a caller real quick, okay? Can we do that?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's take a caller real quick. Go ahead. Mama PK. Believe Humpy, you may know Mama. Mama, how you doing?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Mama.
Hey, I'm doing great. I am just enjoying the peanuts out of listening to you two guys go at it with the old stories. This is a slice right out of my life, I write about it, and people say, oh, it wasn't like that. And I say, yes, it was. Tell them, guys. Tell them what it was like. It sure was.
Mama, who was the best promoter?
Oh, Humpy, darling, you are still the best promoter.
Thank you, dear. Thank you. But I'll tell you one thing.
You ask Terry back at the shop. She'll tell you I promote your Speedway benefits every chance I get.
Hey, Mama, I gave him a book. I told him how to do promoting. He remembers Andy Granatelli, Mr. 500. Tell him, Humpy.
He sure did.
Oh, I remember that book, Tom, and
really,
I'll bet you did.
People talk about Humpy this, Humpy that, but Andy Granatelli was one of the great promoters we ever had. Well, that Chicago Soldiers Field deal was, which Tom Pistone was the absolute master of, was unbelievable. What was the top crowd I got there, Tom?
That was 100,000. The police benevolent race.
That's more than has been to any cup race in the past year. I'm talking about paid now. I know that.
Oh, yeah. And 38,000 regular show.
It was a great thing. And I remember one thing. I asked the great and unfortunately now deceased Jim Rathman, Indy 500 winner 1960, great Indy driver.
My buddy.
I was and he used to race against Tom at Soldiers Field. I said, Jim, who's the greatest race driver you ever ran against? Well, my God, I mean, I'm asking a guy that ran against Foyt, Parnelli Jones, Roger Ward, Roger McCluskey, every great Indy driver, Bill Vukovich, etc. And he simply said, without hesitation, Tom Pistone.
Thank you.
And he did.
Wow.
Hey, there's a difference between that Indy racing and the racing that we know, with fenders. Our racing is racing. They aim the cars. We race them.
Yeah. one of the interesting things that I did here about 3 months ago, I got some old film people have sent me or I've borrowed, or Dick Wallen films, and I sat down 3 days and I watched 3 days of film because I was trying to figure out something. Was racing better then being in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, than it is today? Unqualifiedly, I have to say absolutely, positively it was. Let me tell you why. I'm watching Parnelli Jones and Roger McCluskey at Ascot, which was a big old 4/10 mile dirt track out in California. 40-lap feature. Those guys passed each other about 10 times, bouncing off each other, and it's open-wheel sprint cars now. So I got to get on the phone. I got to call Parnelli. He's my friend. I'm gonna find out what were they doing then that we're not doing there. So I called Parnelli and I said, what was going on? He said, oh, you ought to know. You were in the tire business. He said we were running, tires that were about 11 inches wide versus the 20-inch wide tires they run today. And he said we had to drive those cars with our feet.
Tommy.
Hey, Tiger, you know what he's talking about then, don't you?
Yeah, oh yes.
Driving with your feet and not your hands.
Exactly.
And he said that's what made the difference. And that's why we slid sideways all the way through the corner. Because of those tires. Now drivers use tires as crutches.
Yeah, right.
And they make these dirt tracks so damn hard, it's like running on lubricated cement. And I think that takes a lot of the show away versus, Tom, you ran on the old Hickory Speedway and it was dirt.
Yes.
And you fishtailed all the way around that thing, didn't you?
Yeah, short 4/10.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you drove.
Right.
And the people packed the grandstand to see that. And that's why the tracks in Iowa, Texas, places like that are packed right now, is because it's old dirt track racing and it's guys having a lot of fun,
Well, speaking of that, guys, Tiger, was it Andy Granatelli that used to stage races at Soldier Field and pack that place? And if I'm not mistaken, I think everybody knew that a lot of it was staged.
No, not many.
Oh, really?
No, not many. See, Humpy read the book. He exposes himself in that book. Remember Humpy?
No, I didn't say they were staged.
No.
No, I never said that. No. That was
Humpy, Andy said Andy was staged.
Drag out racing.
Right. Yeah. Andy staged the races. Andy. Yeah, because he had guys on his payroll.
Didn't he pay people to crash to ride up front and crash everybody?
He had 5 guys on his payroll that was the winners. He had 5 guys on the payroll that was the booger artists. That's the ones that would crash you. Humpy, remember I told you the story? He would start these guys, he mixed them up in the field, and then on a green flag, these guys would stop dead. You know what I'm talking about, Humpy?
Oh, yeah, no, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, they would stop dead, and you see nothing but crashes.
Yeah.
And like Humpy says, Humpy's 100% right. We got to get some excitement into these races. Humpy.
Well, that was going to be my question. My question to y'all was going to be, how do we get NASCAR back? We keep saying we need to get NASCAR back to where it was. It's gone so far the other direction. What would you do today to
a lot of the problem is not coming from NASCAR itself. NASCAR being the Jim France, and Brian France and those guys. A lot of this problem is coming directly from the sponsors. They want to take a guy and mold him into something that he's not, and then tell him to shut up. If he says one thing different, he makes a move on the racetrack that doesn't look good. And that is very bad. And I addressed this very, very harshly here and got a lot of flack on it several months ago publicly. I said, hey, you sponsor guys, you need to back off a little bit and not corporatize our race drivers. That's what's ruining racing right now.
Right.
People, I mean, Clint Boyer is not Clint Boyer that you see on the deal. Here's a guy that had Bondo all over him when he was called in by Richard Childress to drive his car. He had to get cleaned up pretty good before he got to North Carolina. And really, you look at Carl Edwards, he was the same way. These guys were working people. Now, here's what happened. Here's what killed us. When Dale Earnhardt got killed, and I wrote a song. I didn't know I could do this, but I did. I wrote a song.
I didn't know you wrote songs.
Good song, and one day it'll be something. It's called "The Last Red Dirt Racer," and it was recorded by a wonderful artist in Nashville named Trelina Walker. And I can say this now. The reason I did not publish it then is because Teresa Earnhardt thought it was too forlorn. She didn't want anything associated with that death that was of a mourning type. Well, I mean, when you die, that's what people do. They mourn you. And they write ballads about you. Now, ballads are things that sometimes don't come back for a long time, like the great Tom Dooley song, which was really about a guy named Tom Dula in North Carolina. So you just try to strain this thing through a blender and produce these false people that we know. Tom and I know what these guys are like.
Right.
But by the time they're strained and get through the public, I remember when Earnhardt, I got tired of all this one time. Earnhardt said the S word down at Talladega, and NASCAR jumped all over him in the winter circle.
Dale Jr.
Yeah, Dale Jr.
Yeah, it was Dale Jr. Yeah, I got the T-shirt.
Next week for the All-Star race, I had my guys build this elaborate Rube Goldberg adjective straining device. So if you said H blankety blank through one end of it, on the other end it came out as shoot. Okay. Well, they were giving a talk at the drivers' meeting, not to speak into this thing, that this is a Humpy thing, and they weren't going to put up with it. Well, the guy that won the poll, I went over there. I knew it was going to happen. He says, well, I can't do that. I said, well, and this is all you got to do, tell a race driver, you don't have any blank. That did it. He had to say it, and it went in as SH blank T, and it came out as SHOOT.
Yeah.
And the press went all over the place. Everybody laughed about it, but it was funny and hysterical at the time. But I mean, that's the kind of thing you can't take this thing away from the guys. I mean, you let them be who they are. If they did that, we would have some characters out there, because there's some real characters running a racetrack. They've just been put through a filter.
They don't even have nicknames now, Humpy. There's not even any nicknames anymore. Like in the old days. In the old days, everybody had nicknames.
I don't know. I see Austin Dillon. Every time I see him, I help bring that boy up. I want to slap him right in the back of the head for wearing that big damn cowboy hat and cowboy boots. I said, man, you ain't no cowboy. You're from Welcome, North Carolina. Put the Daniel Boone costume on or something. But there's no cowboys around here.
Humpy, what about all these beards these guys are wearing? Isn't that kind of ridiculous?
Oh, you ready for this one? This is funny. So my son Tripp, who Tom knows, he's working for an ad agency, and he comes up with the young guns at Gillette. Remember that? They had 6 drivers, and he would come out and talk about how great Gillette's new Mach 3 was.
Right.
Clean shaven. Yeah.
One of the things on the deal, the contracts, was that they must come to the track clean shaven. Well, a couple of guys didn't. And Tripp called me and said, what to do? I said, I want to tell you exactly what to do. You deduct that race from their contract. Dad, that would be $100,000. I said, good, do it. If you won't do it, I will.
Right.
And he busted 2 of them, and they got the message. But I don't know. This coming out with all this beard and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how you stop that, but at least they got a little character to them, when they do that.
Yeah, look at Chase Elliott. Now he's got a beard. That's ridiculous.
I was just going to mention Chase.
You know what I mean? That's ridiculous.
Wait a minute. Wait, you said Chase has a beard?
Yeah, Chase Elliott.
No, he
calls it a beard.
He's only 15 years old.
He's got a beard. Look at that nationwide race.
You have a beard when you're 15 years old.
Well, you won the
Tom was Italian. He had a beard when he was 15 years old. That's a different deal. Chase Elliott's a Scotch-Irishman. We don't have beards when you're 15.
Yeah.
I know he's older than that, but for God's sake, that's the first I heard about that.
Oh, my God.
Hey, speaking of nicknames, guys, you guys both have a nickname. Tiger, how'd you get your nickname?
Well, at Soldiers Field that night, I was wearing a zebra shirt. A zebra. And I won every race they had there. With the elephant race, the donkey race, the horse race, the foot race, the ostrich race. I won every race there was, and then Andy called me Tiger instead of calling me Zebra. And that's how I got the name.
And how about you, Humpy? How'd you get yours?
Well, it wasn't as spectacular as that. My dad was the guard on the Red Grange, Illinois team back in the late 20s. And so he became a coach. And, when you go into sports, you can't get rid of a nickname. So, at any rate, they started calling me Little Humpy because I was the firstborn. And that was kind of hard to get rid of that. And then, you by God, you go into racing where you got Banjo and Tiger and Cotton and Termite and all these people. And getting rid of that nickname is damn near impossible. So I just kind of swallowed real hard and let it go. My sister hates it, but, that's just tough. I said, well, swallow real hard and keep going. I have to call you Humpy, though. Well, just swallow hard and keep going. But
Humpy, I
think that's what made racing. You got, all these great nicknames. And,
Humpy, I heard you got that name from Camel cigarettes.
That's right. That's right. The coach caught him smoking Camels.
That's right.
And made him run around the field every morning for practice. And so teammates started calling him Humpy for the humps on the camel. And so when he became a coach, that name followed him down here.
Yeah, boy.
So, So my third, when Howard A. Wheeler III was born, we immediately nicknamed him Trip, and nobody ever called him Humpy.
Call him Humpy. Humpy, you used to do some racing yourself. Well, when did you race, and what races were you in, and why did you quit racing?
I'll tell you why I quit, because I got my sports mixed up. I was boxing at the same time, and I thought, well, the thing that boxing you do is hit people. And that's what I kept doing on racetrack. Was anything around, I would hit it. And I remember I was down at Sumter, South Carolina, racing, and we were racing old modified cars with like old engines and all that stuff. Tom knows all about that. And so coming off, I accidentally drew pole position in the heat race. And I lost it coming out of the fourth turn on the second lap and crossed up in front of the whole field. And there was about a 20-car pile-up, and all of a sudden, I thought the wreck was over, but it was like an ARCA wreck used to be.
Yeah.
It kept going.
Yeah.
And somebody landed on top of me because I started smelling the gas. And my top was bent in pretty good, and I couldn't get out of the car, and I was kind of worried about that. And I remember this guy came up because he was a record driver, and I knew what he looked like, and he had one of those cigars in the corner of his mouth that he'd smoked down to the tip.
Oh, gosh.
Do not throw that thing down, because a lot of times people will just, throw one like that down. And there was so much gas around there, I didn't like that. So I finally, they got the guy over me out, and it was Cale Yarborough. Now, what people don't realize is that Cale, Bobby Allison, Donnie, Richard Petty, Maurice Petty, all those guys, we were all teenagers together. We all saw each other all the time at racetracks. We had no idea what any of us were going to do. I didn't know Richard Petty was going to be a great driver, or Cale, or anything like that. But at any rate, Cale gets out of the car, and he walks over to me. Now, we've known each other, I'm probably 21 at the time. We've known each other since we were 15 years old. He said, looked at me, and he says, very politely, he says, Humpy, one of us needs to quit. And I knew who he was talking about. And so I did. Because I remember he used to tell me, he's up in Indianapolis one time trying to race, and he had a bad wreck up there. And I was in his motel room, and he said, you know, that was one of the only wrecks that I totally can remember that wasn't caused by you. Thank God I never tried Indianapolis. That would have been bad. But I never had whatever it took to be able to get a race car around a racetrack without some kind of commotion. And I see guys today that, now I can tell people how to get around a racetrack, but damn if I can do it myself. And I've tried. I run big cars around the track and everything else. But I remember, Tom, you'll like this. We're out in Phoenix, and we're testing the Lotus Fords. Well, we get up in the morning, and we're out there. I'm with Firestone. Ford guys are there, and no one. The drivers aren't there. The drivers, for some reason or another, we had two drivers. We had Lloyd Ruby and Mario. Neither one of them had gotten to the track, and we couldn't find Mario, and we absolutely Lloyd was late on his flight. So we're sitting out there, and one of the guys from Ford said, why don't you take it around the track? We've seen you practicing, and I had practiced a couple laps in them. I left pit road, all those fancy guys there, and I spun out before I got to the first turn. I said, that's it. That's it. That's it. No, I'm not going to do that again. But those cars were so twitchy, you know, compared to a stock car or something. I mean, they were just, of course, they were also, to a certain extent, a little bit easier to drive because they were so light and the tires were so wide and soft. You just didn't want to be one when it went the wrong way. It was not a good car to be in it when that happened.
You're right.
So I let Tom and the rest of them do their thing, and they did it wonderfully. And I would say this about Tom, though. If there was a better short track driver in the United States in history, I don't know one that was better than Tom. He, you know, the guys like wonderful short track guys like Red Farmer and Dick Trickle and people like that came along. But when you measure the kind of competition that Tom had back in those days against some of the guys they raced against, that was Tom, how many races do you figure you've won altogether?
God, I don't know.
Does anybody even know?
No, I don't think so. No.
I mean, it was hundreds and hundreds of races.
Hey, I got to put Humpy on my payroll. He's a good agent.
Hey, Tiger, on that note of wins, what was your favorite win? And recap the particular race a little bit for us.
The favorite win? Well, I think it was Martinsville, Virginia, in the Grand National. I thought it was a Grand National race, but it was a convertible race. You know. No.
And so tell us a little bit about that day.
Oh, no, you're talking about winning?
Yeah, I mean, tell us how the race went and how'd you win it?
Well, it was a convertible race. They ran the convertibles and the hardtops together, and that's the way they ran it in 1959. See, it's hard to tell which race is the best. You know, I mean, when you win, you win.
The convertibles were because you could see the driver.
Oh, I love convertibles. I love them. Yeah, you can see the driver, and the drivers can see the fans and everything else like that. Hey, not to change the subject. Not to change the subject. I want to ask Humpy. Humpy, do you remember the nitrous bottle, that 1 pound bottle that I gave you, and you painted it white, and you put it on the back stretch of the Charlotte Motor Speedway?
Oh, yes.
You remember that? It was a nitrous bottle. My son Sammy designed it. It was a 1 pound bottle with 4 9-volt batteries with a solenoid, and the drivers would wear it. Till today, NASCAR has never searched a driver. Is that right, Humpy?
That's exactly right. Never. And I know of 23 bottles that I sold, and I know everyone that had one. so I told Humpy about it. He says, "Let's throw one on the backstretch," and you did that day, Humpy. I did.
On the backstretch. Yeah, I'll never forget that. Yep. Hey, Humpy.
Well, we had some fun in those days. I know that I went down to. I got David Pearson was really getting under my skin because he'd won
so many
10 straight poles at the Speedway, and crowds were starting to dwindle. And I tried everything in the world to get them off the pole. I talked to NASCAR. I said, "You guys, I thought you guys were inspectors. You can't inspect nothing. You can't figure out why he's beating everybody else. You know he's doing something." No, we don't. Yak. Well, finally I said, "Well, hell, I'm going to go down there. You know, I know a little bit about cars. I'm going to watch him go through these corners." So I went to the 3rd corner and the 4th corner, and I'd already been over to the 2nd corner. So then the first turn. And this is practice now, official practice. And there's no guardrail in front of me or anything. I'm right down there on the apron. Here he comes in 21 car, and he pulls over and stops right out on the racetrack. And he says, "I didn't get no tow money today." Well, y'all know what tow money is. I know Tom Pistone does.
That's how we lived.
That's how we lived in those days. They lived in those days. Promoters would give them a little bit of extra money for coming to track. So I made a terrible, horrible mistake, and I gave him a $20 bill.
That was a lot.
That was a lot.
You got right. That was a lot.
Money. And he says, "Well, I want you to sign it so I can make sure." This car's going around us now.
Yeah.
So I signed it. I have given him over $420 bills since then. Because every time I see him, he wants his tow money.
Yep.
80-some years old, he wants his tow money.
You know what will get you, Benny, with these promoters? Now, you go to a racetrack. Your car blew up, caught on fire. It wrecked. You follow me? All right, now you got to go back home. You got to go back home to Chicago. Now, they let you wait after the race in line, and you got to go in the office, and the promoter's sitting with his feet on top of the desk, and he says, "Well, what can I do for you?" Now, he knows I wrecked, I blew up, the car burned up, and he knows I got to get back to Chicago. You know how much he give me?
Yeah.
$10. $10.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, but back then, Humpy knows $10 to get you back home.
Well, that's some promoters were really bad about that, and some of them were pretty good. But
yeah, you're right. You know,
to do that to a guy but you know, word got around about those guys, and even us fellow promoters, we'd get pissed off at them, and we'd have these meetings. Bill France would always send at least one person there, usually Enoch Staley.
Yeah, Enoch Staley.
To find out what the hell we were talking about.
Right.
And because he didn't want anybody plotting against him. And then he'd call me or Clay Earls the next day and say, "What did you guys talk about?" "Well, we talked about," I used to tell him, "we talked about you all morning."
Right.
At any rate, that was back in the days when we had some colorful promoters, you know, and it wasn't owned all by corporations and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, some promoters would help you out and some wouldn't. Now, when my first dirt track, I wasn't but 22 years old. I didn't have any money. But I had 2 little race cars, and I sold them. And I put enough money in it to have a race. Marvin Panch had this little track in Gastonia, Robinwood Speedway. I think you even raced over there, Tom.
Yeah, yep.
Fast, high bank track. It was built for midgets. Never worked for them. But at any rate, man, it came close to race time, and it was like Thursday, and I looked in my bank account was a chest of drawers. I did my accounting. On the top drawer, I had all my bills. And on the second drawer, I had all of my money. And if I had more money in the second drawer than the first, I figured I was ahead of the game. Well, I looked in that second drawer that night, and, man, there ain't nothing in it. And I got to pay the purse. So I said, well, we got to have one more hit before race time to sell any tickets. So what I did is I had a whole bunch of colored little 8x10 sheets printed up in about 5 or 10 different colors. And I went out to the Belmont Airport. It was about 800 feet of grass, and there was only one plane there, and it was an old World War I biplane that this guy taught me how to fly. And he wasn't there. And I said, well, damn, I got to get these posters out. So I just jumped in and I took off. And I flew to the first mill village I came to. Well, mill villages were like, steel mills, things like that. They were just grim, great places. Right. And so I'm flying over this one mill village, and I start dropping those things out of the plane. Well, the kids are all over the place because there's all these colors coming down from the sky, like confetti, and they had to see what it was. I hit about 8 mill villages that day, and I'm coming back, and I get over the Catawba River, and all of a sudden I said, I need to check my fuel. Well, that was a great time to check it because I was on the final approach. There wasn't any. Holy cow. And so I'm flying down. There's a whole big row of trees before we get to the little runway. And so I'm trying to save gas. I'm going to glide in. And he had taught me how to do that. And so I see this big tree coming up. So I said, I better get this thing going again. Well, there wasn't any going because we were flat out of gas. And I dodged that big tree somehow or another and landed the plane. Well, the guy called me up the next day, and he says, you lousy SO, you know what? He says, you took that thing without my permission. I said, but I've done that before. He says, yeah, but you always fill the tank up. I didn't have any money. Monday when I got back, we had a good race that weekend, and we did well, but we filled his tank up on Sunday afternoon. Because I think he saved the day. I think those were the people that came in and let us make some money.
Yep. Oh, man. That's a hell of a thing to have to do to sell tickets to a race. Get in a plane and
well,
drop
as Tom knows, back in those days, man, you put up posters on telephone poles. You did whatever you had to do. Yes. And that's what made the good promoters from the lousy ones. And Andy Granatelli was one of the best.
Right. He was one of the best up the north, not the south.
Yeah.
That's what you gotta say.
There was, we had such a tough time coming up because it was so hard to get publicity. Most of the papers just want to write about baseball, basketball, football, and a little bit of golf. And they kind of looked at us like we smell bad. And so, we... I know Bruton, he decided one time he was going to do something different. And he had a track on one side of Charlotte, and I had one on the other. And he got all the modified drivers, Buck Baker and Speedy Thompson and all those guys, and made them put a coat and tie on. And he had an ad with their coats and ties on. And even though he was a rival promoter to me, he and I talked a lot back in those days. I said, what the hell did you put that ad in the paper for? You want a whole lot more people come to my track than yours. What are you talking about? I said, man, guys with coats and ties on, for God's sake. Yeah. We got to lift the sport up. Well, I think he lifted it up too high that day. There was a time and a place for all that. But we would do anything to try to make it better and make it people think more of it and all that. But at the same time, those of us who were really, really selling tickets knew what it took to sell them, and that is we needed some rough, tough characters.
Exactly.
That's what sold the tickets.
Exactly.
And that's what's not happening now. You know, you got the toothpaste smiles and the starched jeans and all this kind of stuff. People don't want to see that. I always thought, man, this is the time. And I told Brian Francis, and he frankly agreed with me. Because a lot of people think it's NASCAR's fault all this happened. Well, NASCAR was NASCAR's fault for a long time because they tried to fancy things up too much. But he knows that's not the thing to do now. We get somebody out of the damn sagebrush of Texas or the cornfields of Iowa who doesn't look right, he doesn't talk right, he's got buck teeth. He just drives the pure hell out of a race car.
Right.
That's what people want to see.
Exactly right.
Yeah, you're right.
That's too bad that it's too bad between all of the vintage racers and the Saturday night short track goers, everybody couldn't put up a $10 bill and sponsor some bucktooth guy to go race.
It'd be incredible.
To go race.
Now, Tom, let me ask you a question. Do you think in today's corporate, pristine environment that Junior Johnson or Earnhardt Sr. would have ever gotten a ride?
Would they ever got a ride?
I say, do you think if they were looking like they did when you and I knew them when they first broke in?
No,
they wouldn't have gotten a ride.
No. Dale had that long hair. You remember that curly hair he
had?
had?
Stringy ass hair. And Junior just came out of prison. He had everything but the numbers across his chest.
Right, and he had the bib overalls.
and the bib overalls.
And the big chewing tobacco in his mouth, remember?
Big chewing tobacco and kind of a dumb smile, you know.
And he sit in that chair and he says,
God, they would never got a sponsor.
And he sit in that chair and say, yeah, boy, what can I do for you, boy?
Yeah, I'll never forget what Junior said in the winner's circle at Daytona. Was he won was it the 1960 Daytona 500?
Yeah, right.
So Chris Economack is interviewing in the winner's circle, and Junior being a man of few words, Chris says, I think he got $50,000 a win. Was that about right in those days?
Yep, that's about right.
He said, Junior, you've won $50,000, son. What are you going to do with all this money?
Yeah, all this money.
Junior said, spend it.
Spend it. But you know, we had Steve O'Donnell on last week. In fact, he was on the same show you were on, Tiger, a couple of weeks back. Right. And you know, I did pose a question to him about where is the character gone? Where, you know, they went with this deal of boys have at it, and it seemed like the sponsors kind of put the squash on that. And,
right.
And since then, viewership, you know, I mean, the ratings for NASCAR is going down. It's certainly not going up. And I asked them, you know, what do the sponsors think about this? I mean, are they open to this idea, or are they the ones putting the pressure on to you know, to keep away from this? What do you guys? I mean, what are you hearing? Are you guys hearing anything about the sponsors? You know, maybe living with this a little bit and let some of the character come back to NASCAR? Because I'm telling you, I enjoy sitting down and watching an old vintage race. I have a blast watching those races, and they're not even live. A lot of times more fun to watch those races than it is to watch the Sunday race.
You know what I just heard today? This young lady told me. She said that, Tom, you know what I do when I watch the race? She turns the TV volume down and listens to the radio.
It's a better race.
It's a better race.
Yeah, well, it's certainly more
exciting. How about that, Humpy? Is that true, Humpy?
Oh, listen, absolutely. I'm coming back from Bristol in my own PRN, which I ran at the time.
Right.
I hear them, and I called them. I said, Doug Rice was running. I said, Doug, what the hell race are you broadcasting? Bristol race. I said, well, that was the dullest race I ever seen when I left. That was right after they redid the track, you know.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was just people going around and around in circles. He said, Humpy, we're trying to we're trying to put a little butter on the toast because the toast is burnt right now.
You and I told Bruton that they had done the wrong thing to bring the track back to like they used to be.
That's
I remember
exactly
that.
Right, because see,
I remember.
Tom knows it like the old tracks like Bowman Gray, which is
right.
just like Chicago was. It's
right.
bump and run. That's how you get around.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And when they took that little groove, I mean, when they put that extra lane in at Bristol, they knocked the bump and run right out of it. So
exactly. You're right 100%.
That was an example, absolute classic example.
So you heard that story about the radio, right?
Pardon?
You heard the story, the radio is better to listen to than the TV.
Oh, that's right. But that Bristol thing was an example of where engineers and guys with fancy slide rules took over and did it their way instead of racing people.
Right.
And, they made a nice track out of it, but not for the kind of racing people go to Bristol wanted to see.
Right.
And that is reflected in the grandstand today.
Yep. Yeah.
Exactly.
You could get
I
a
always
ticket
told
before
somebody, I said, I could have more people in Indianapolis if you let me go down to downtown Charlotte and run 2 trains head on at 100 miles an hour right in the middle of the square. You couldn't put the people down there. I said, but if they never hit each other when they went by, the next time you promoted that train wreck, they wouldn't be there. And that's what happened at Bristol. The train wreck didn't happen.
Yeah. Right. Humpy, do you remember Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on the 1 mile asphalt they used when it was dirt?
Oh, yeah.
When it was dirt. That when they have a wreck, they hit this bell. You know what I mean? They knock this bell real loud. They would knock this bell and get the stands. The people in the stands jumping all over the place. And then at Indianapolis, you had that hollow sound. You know what I'm talking about?
That sure did.
On the PA. Okay, this is what I think the racetracks need. They need something like that to get the people crazy in the stands. You get that hollow sound back.
Now, that's interesting you said that because I was up in Indianapolis working when the rear engine car came in, and I don't know from nothing about those cars at the time, but I thought that's crazy to let a car come in with an engine in the rear.
Exactly.
So they did anyway, and then I thought what's even more crazy is the poor driver's laying down there between 2 60-gallon tanks of gasoline, and the only thing between him and the concrete wall is a little bit of sliver of aluminum and maybe a 1/4 inch of fiberglass.
Right.
And, of course, that proved fatal to a lot of race drivers. But I remember going up to Milwaukee the next week. And as you well know, Tom, that was always the week after the Indy race.
Right.
It was a big race.
Right.
Boyd took his old Watson Roadster up there, and Parnelli took his. And then they had the Lotus cars of Jimmy Clark and stuff.
Right.
And they were just a whole lot faster because the weight distribution was different.
And
I
the
can
tires.
remember you couldn't see those cars in the corner because they were so low profile they went underneath the guardrail. And I said, the American public is not going to buy this deal.
Right.
Because they want to see something big. They want 300-pound linemen, they want 7-foot-plus centers, and they don't want little race cars. And quite frankly, I'll tell you one time, Billy France and I were fishing down in the Bahamas, had a few drinks, bragging about how great NASCAR was.
Right.
Both of us. And I said, Billy, we can brag all we want to about this, that, and the other thing, but I said, it just simply might have been the size of the cars. Because before the rear engine car, Indy was way ahead of stock cars, as Tom knows, because he ran up there in those areas.
Right.
But when the rear engine cars came in, that's when stock car racing took off. And I've always maintained has a lot to do with what you can see on the track. And that's one of the reasons I went nuts and told Brian France, I said, I go to the track. We had I just went berserk when Earnhardt sponsor, Budweiser, showed up with a camouflage car for the 600. I went totally bananas. I called Augie Bush. I called everybody I could think of. Why do you put a friggin' camouflage car out on the racetrack? You know, you want him to disappear, number one, but what I was concerned about more than anything else is people knew that Earnhardt's number, and they knew that white Budweiser car. And they get to the track, they're not going to find that camouflage car. As a matter of fact, the TV announcers had a heck of a time finding it. And the fact that we let these guys change colors on these cars as many as 10 times for one car during the season is sacrilegious to the fans, because if on TV you might be able to figure it out the last part of the race, but if you're sitting in the grandstand and you're on a big old mile-and-a-half track, much less Daytona, and your favorite driver, Jeff Gordon's a good example. He expects to see blue and red.
Yep.
And all of a sudden he's black and something else. You don't know where he is. Now, I know these guys do it for sponsors, but that's why we need to lower the cost of this thing. And Tom and I have been preaching this to him. Tom, you preached it to Bill France Sr. and Jr.
Oh, yes.
About getting the cost of these cars down and getting away from this outrage. Tom's the one that came up with the greatest idea in the world, the best. We're talking about shocks. That's when those big buck shocks came in. And with $5,000. $5,000 for shocks.
Right.
Wow.
People used to buy houses for $5,000.
That's right.
Then you got to have an engineer to figure it all out. Well, Tom says, you remember that, I said 8 times. You remember that shock Monroe had? He said, yeah.
Monroe.
It used to be $85. Now it's 60-something. Remember you telling me that?
Yeah.
Now, how fast did Bill Elliott run with those shocks?
220 miles an hour.
That's right, and they worked.
That was average speed.
Now, why couldn't we run the same shock right now?
And we got the shocks free, if you remember, Humpy.
Yeah, that's right. You didn't pay anything for them.
You didn't pay anything. They used to give us 8 shocks per car. 8 shocks. And the same thing could be done today, Humpy. You're right. The same thing could be done today.
Well, I went back to Childress' trailer.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at all these shocks and all these springs, for God's sakes.
Right.
I said, wait a minute, this is for the whole season? No, this is for Charlotte. I said, huh? Charlotte? How many times is this track going to change?
And the engineers.
And the engineers,
And the engineers.
Smokey forecast it all. Come back from Indianapolis one time, and he called me. He says, they've gone to hell up there. What do you mean? Oh, they have. He says, I had to leave. I didn't even stay for the race. Now, for him not to be up in Indianapolis for a race, let me tell you how bad it was. He come to Charlotte. He go up in the control tower where I was. And I would not have let anybody get away with this but him. Maybe I'd have let you do it, Tom, but no other two. And he'd be laying under my desk, looking out on the racetrack. I'm looking out, not him. He's underneath my damn desk up there watching the friggin' Indy 500 on TV while the 600 was going on. I still wish I could see this. Somebody in the press box come up here and they'll have a field day. But it's gotten so out of hand, and it's crazy because, Tom, you remember the day when Ricky Rudd showed up at Al Rudd's old car at, you probably worked on the damn thing, at Rockingham.
Exactly.
And then Bill Elliott showed up, and all the Elliott brothers working on that Ford he had. Yep. And, these were guys that just put their money in it, or you're a number 59 Chevy that you brought down here. Yep. It's just crazy what's happened.
It could be done, Humpy. It could be done. You know who could do it?
It really can.
You know who could do it first? ARCA. ARCA could turn the thing all the way around.
They really could.
ARCA could go to that crate motor, go to the stock shocks, get rid of all that fancy suspension, and ARCA could do it, and you know that.
Well, and another thing, while you guys are here, worse things are not worse. They're not worse, but they're not as good. Are happening on the short tracks. Why do you need a $50,000 motor to run a half-mile dirt? I haven't figured that out. I'm not talking about a sprint car, but I'm talking about just a plain old stock car.
Yeah, late model dirt.
And the guy ends up with 10 cars, so he calls me because we're in the short track business, and he can't figure out why he doesn't have a field. I said, we don't have a field because if you got an engine that costs that much, how much does the car cost? Oh, it's not the car, it's the components. And I said, why do you let them run them?
Right.
Well, they won't come back. I said, how many are you getting? He says, I started 8 last race last year. I said, well, that's why you're not having any cars. And I said, you need to get rid of that stuff. And maybe not change the car right now, but, I mean, you can change the tires.
Right.
You can change the engines.
Right.
And all that stuff. And, get the thing back down to some sense.
Exactly.
And that's what's going to bring it back.
Yes, and it could be done. It definitely
can be done. It's not that hard to do.
No. Nope. You're right, Humpy.
There are so many people that talk about this, and particularly what I consider to be the experts, such as you two. Why is NASCAR having such a hard time listening? You even said that Brian France even somewhat agreed with some of your remarks. Why are they having such a hard time to turn it around?
It's not that easy. But they could make a rule and they could do it next year, and Humpy knows that. They could change the engines. They could change. You know what they could do right now? Change the shocks immediately. Yeah. Immediately. That could be done. You follow me?
Uh-huh.
Overnight, that could be done. And they could get a shock company to sponsor the race.
Exactly.
They won't have to pay one dime for a shock. Not one dime. Take my word for it. And Humpy knows that.
Yeah, and nobody cares what cars got on it.
Well, NASCAR is talking about now, currently, about reducing the horsepower of the engines. Could they not do something to the engines to make them less expensive? If they're going to change the horsepower, could they not incorporate that somehow into making them less expensive to own, run, and operate at the same time?
Nope, they got to go to a crate motor.
Will they change the horsepower, do you think?
Nope, they got to go to a crate motor. Case closed.
Yeah,
right Humpy.
If they just say, okay, we're going to reduce horsepower to 450.
Yeah.
Then these Hendricks engine builders and Childresses and those guys, they're going to get down there and they're going to spend so much money trying to figure out how to get more torque, more top end, more this, more that from those engines at that horsepower. And believe me, they will have more money than they got in 800 horsepower today.
Right. That's why they should outlaw and just use a crate motor, the way it comes from the factory.
I've even thought about, I think, Tom, you and I talked about this one time. You have the motor sitting in the trailer, NASCAR trailer. It says Ford motor, one trailer, Toyota another one, Chevrolet another.
Right.
And you come in race day, your car doesn't have a motor in it. And you go in there and pick your motor out. You can pick any motor that's in there out.
Exactly.
And then you take what you got. One race you might be 5 horsepower short, and the next race you might be 5 up. If he's 5 short, you just tell the driver he's not driving the car right. But that would cure the thing. Now, then guys, and I love Jack and Richard Childress and all the top car owners, but they got so much money coming in. They purposely are outspending everybody to make their cars go faster.
Right.
Yeah.
And anything that knocks that off the edge will hurt them. And that. And Tom, that translates. Tell them how that translates back to your nationwide and your truck series.
Well, see, back then, Humpy, when we come to the racetrack, you had to have both heads off the engine. Don't you remember?
Oh yeah.
See, and we put the engine together at the racetrack. So the same thing as like you're talking right now. Let NASCAR give you the engine. You know what I mean? Let them just go picking the trailer. Okay, you could have that one, you could have this one. And let NASCAR do all the engine working. And use the crate motor, the stock crate motor.
Yeah, that one that came right out of the crate.
Right, and you could buy that motor from General Motors for $3,800.
Yep.
That's right.
Hey, gentlemen, we've got a caller.
Seriously, I want to talk about Tom Pistone's racing.
Oh God. Okay.
Now I want to tell you, this is back in the days when we had promoters, and we ran 50-some races a year.
Right.
We ran everywhere from Daytona to Darlington to Columbia, South Carolina, to Islip, 1/5 mile track, to Bridgehampton road course.
One car,
and we also had the convertible division. Now I love the convertible division because you could see the drivers' arms moving around in the cars.
Exactly.
And some of the greatest shows that we ever had were when Tom Pistone and Tiny Lund went at it, tooth and nail, at places like Columbia and Greenville Pickens and
Savannah.
Some of those tracks, swapping the lead back and forth. Now, I know you remember those days because, Tiger, you're not the tallest guy in the world, but Tiny was.
Right.
And people love that show.
Right.
And, I've seen people in Columbia, when those two guys were racing each other, it just erupted, getting fist fights and everything else up there in that grandstand.
Oh, yes,
it was a show. And then your nemesis, old Curtis Turner, and a few other guys would jump in the middle of that every once in a while. And it was really good fun racing. But you loved racing with Tiny, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Hey, Humpy, I don't know if you were at Bowman Gray that night when Bobby Ellison and Curtis Turner got into it. I don't know if you were there that night.
Yeah.
See, I got there late, and I did not know that Curtis Turner and Bobby Ellison got in a wreck earlier in the race. I didn't know that.
Oh, my Lord.
And Junior Johnson borrowed me a motor to go to that race.
Yep.
All right, so the caution flag came out, and Bobby Ellison and Curtis Turner was in the rear. So they jumped me on the caution flag. And the green flag ain't fell down yet. And they started in front of me. So I hit Bobby into Curtis, spun Curtis back out again, and then the feud started. I don't know if you remember that. Curtis and Bobby hit each other. They smashed each other. They went across the infield and got each other. And then Curtis Turner's car died on the backstretch, just completely died. And here come Bobby Ellison stroking along and drove over the roof of the car, if you can remember that.
Yeah, remember that.
Right over the roof of that car.
Oh, my God, that was hilarious.
It was hilarious, right? The people went crazy for it. And NASCAR didn't do nothing about it, if you can remember that.
Yeah, nobody got fined because I don't remember any fines back in that time.
That's right. There was no fines.
Nah.
You know what I mean?
They wanted to show. They wanted. What was the worst altercation race you ever had up at Soldiers Field?
Oh, they were all bad. They were all bad. And them days you had to bring 10 guys with you to the racetrack because it was a fight every night. And I was strong because I used to bring 10 guys with me. You know? It's the same thing down here when I first came, Humpy. It was bad down here.
Oh, I know.
You know, Curtis Turner, Joe Weatherly, all them guys, them guys wanted to fight. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Tom, we got a caller. We got a caller on the line. His name is Bill from Charlotte, and he's got a question for you, Tom.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, Bill, you there? Go ahead and ask Tom your question.
All right. I've read about you racing in Chicago. Somebody was talking about Chicago Field, and you were track champ up there, and you dusted for years. You dusted everybody up there. But somebody told me a story about going to South America and racing against some women, and they kicked your can. Is there truth to that, or is that a story?
Jim Rathman was in charge of Chevrolet in 1958, and Dick Doan from Dundee, Illinois. We had 58 Corvettes, and we went on this airplane, and I saw these two girls on the airplane, and I said, "What are they doing here?" It was Denise McCullough, and I can't remember the other one's name. And I asked Jim Rapp, and I said, "Who's these girls?" He said, "They're going to race against you." I said, "These girls beat me up, burn my helmet." They went by me like I was parked.
So what Betty Skelton was it?
At Caracas, Venezuela.
Was it Betty Skelton?
It was Denise McCullough. I can't remember the other girl's name. I can't remember.
Bet it was Betty Skelton.
Betty Skelton? Probably.
Yeah.
So what happened?
He was a good racer.
Yeah, see, what happened in Caracas back in '58, that a war started out in Cuba, if you guys remember. And the president of Caracas disappeared. And we left there, and we come back home. So I was in California, and Jim Rathman calls me up and says, "Tom," he says, "I want you to fly to Caracas and get our Corvettes." He said, "I want you to bring them back home." So like a dummy, I get in the airplane, I fly to Caracas, we land in Cuba, and I see all these soldiers coming on the airplane with rifles. And I said, "What the heck's going on here?" And Jim Rathman knew exactly what was going on. There was a war. The war was on, and I didn't know that. So I flew into Caracas, Venezuela, with these soldiers, and somehow I found a pirate operation airplane. I found a pirate that flew anywhere. So I hired these two airplanes. I hired, and we took the Corvettes, and the door was so small we couldn't get the Corvettes in there. So what I had to do was disassemble the bodies and turn them in sideways. You know what I'm talking about, Humpy? And we put the cars inside the airplane. And then I told the pilot, "Do not tell Jim Rathman how we got these cars in this plane." And Cook was in charge of General Motors at that time, if you can remember, Humpy.
Yeah,
So the plane flew back to Miami, and Jim went out there to get the Corvettes, and he couldn't figure out how to get them out. so I got. See, Jim was good on stuff like that. He used to play games on you, and believe me, they were having a war in 1958. That's the honest to God's truth.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And you flew in the middle of it.
Yeah, I flew in there. Huh?
So this woman did beat you then,
got,
right?
Oh, she. What do you mean? She went by me like I was parked.
Well, I appreciate your time, Mr. Pistone.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Humpy, back in them days, women were not even allowed to pitch.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? And
not at all.
When you see a woman, you say, "She's going to race against me?"
Yeah, yeah. Much less how she's going to get in the garage area.
Right. Now you're talking. Now today you got the girls in the garage there with these mini skirts on. How can you work? How can you concentrate?
Yeah, NASCAR wouldn't allow that back in the day. Yeah.
Hey, Humpy, could you imagine Leroy Yarborough, Curtis Turner, Joe Weatherly, especially Joe Weatherly, with all these girls in the pits with mini skirts?
No, they couldn't have run one lap. They'd been sitting there with their eyes in the back of their head.
How about David Pearson? You think they would allow these girls to walk through that garage area?
No, David Pearson's lap times will slow down 3 seconds.
I cannot believe what's going on today. I really can't.
That's incredible.
I know it. Humpy, one more time. At Moyock, Missouri, we used to race up there.
Oh, yeah.
And we went up to this racetrack, and after the race, the promoter was gone.
Track.
Yeah, it was gone. The promoter was gone.
Yeah.
So Elmer Langley, Clyde Lynn, and Henley Gray, and a bunch of other guys, they burned the stands down at the racetrack. We had no money. The darn promoter took off on us.
It's burned the ground. That's a good way to put a promoter right out of business for not paying.
Hey, Humpy's buddy, Bruton Smith, what he did to me in 1960 at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the track tore up the first race. So they repaved the racetrack. And none of the drivers, it was in the newspaper, front page, none of the drivers said they were going to run because the track was so darn rough.
Yeah.
So Curtis Turner and Bruton Smith hired me to do a tire test for Goodyear. So I did a tire test. And back in them days, there was no interliners. So I went to the corner and turn number 1, and the tire blew, and I went through the guardrail and totally demolished my car. So I had Bruton Smith on the radio, on our radio program, Racing Now and Then. And I asked Bruton, I said, hey, Bruton, you forgot to pay me for my red car. And Humpy, you know how Bruton is, always comes up with something sharp.
Oh, yeah.
He says, Tom, you forgot to pay me for the guardrail.
Oh, Lord.
Was it any good for that, Humpy?
Well,
hey,
those
Tom,
days.
You said something interesting a couple of weeks ago when you were on the show, and you really didn't spend that much time on it. I wanted to recap it a little bit. Two things. One was you had mentioned you had brought the first fully adjustable car to a racetrack. Did I get that
1955. Right? Yeah, 1955.
The
whole
right?
car was completely adjustable. Screw jacks all over, and the roll bars all over. They never saw anything like it. Aluminum roll bars.
Right.
In fact, in 57, Lee Petty built an Oldsmobile, and he put the aluminum roll bars in her. Back then there was no rules. And I think that at Downington, didn't Bob Myers get killed in that car? Fonny Flock. Fonny Flock hit the roof of the car and the roll bars.
His father.
Yeah, you're right. And the roll bars shattered, and NASCAR outlawed the aluminum roll bars. See, there was no rule back then. There was no rule on weight.
Right. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you went as far as to acid dip your body. Now, I work in the metal industry, so I know what that is. But tell our listeners what that does. Well,
it lightens the body up. It lightens it all. There was no rule on weight. There was no rule whatsoever on weight.
Right.
See,
and by dipping it in the acid, that would actually strip material and thin the material out. Correct?
Yeah, make it paper thin. See, like I said, there's no rules. See, and I hate to bring this up, Fireball Roberts' car, I know that for a fact how that car was built. Jack Sullivan was a crew chief. They cut the frame in half, and they took all the nuts and the bolts and they cut the bolts in half. They made that car so light that the car disintegrated. But there was no rule. There was no rule. You get me? And it was. Today you got.
That was going on in racing, proliferating through racing in the 60s.
Exactly.
The power and that. Remember, Tom increased so much, the 427s and all that kind of stuff, and it was just too much power for the safety.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
And so the jack screws that you had put into the car, how long did it take before it became commonplace? If you were I think
it was 1959 is when NASCAR finally put them in their cars, because I was the first one up to 57 that had them. Nobody else had them.
And now we're talking about the same track bar adjustment and wedge adjustment that are in today's cars.
Yeah.
So you were the first one to bring that technology to a racetrack.
Really hadn't changed
that's
a
amazing.
bit, has it, Tom?
Pardon?
Really hadn't changed a bit, has it?
No, nothing's changed.
No,
absolutely nothing. It just costs too much money to go racing. That's all.
Yeah.
Humpy, what they should do, I hate to get back on the subject again, what they should do is take that K&N series and bring it to Wilkesboro, bring it to Rockingham, and bring it back to those tracks like that there. That's a good series at K&N, real good series.
Well, and I had an idea along that, too, that you could combine that and make a double header by taking old Cup cars and old Nationwide cars and letting the guys run them with crate motors in them.
No, you're right, 100%. Crate motors.
At Wilkesboro, you'd have over 100 cars a race.
Right, exactly. And
Rockingham, same. There's so many, as you know better than anybody, young guys that want a chance to get out there and run. They just simply cannot afford the awfulness of trying to put even a truck together today.
Nope. I got 4 Craftsman trucks sitting in my garage right now, and I can't run them. Yeah. I got 4 complete trucks. Cost too much money.
Yeah.
See? And just like we'll go back to Nationwide right now. Humpy, why don't they open the field of 50 cars?
Well,
I don't understand this.
Good night. First race at Darlington was 75.
Right.
And, that went along pretty good. And I know that even if you say went like in Rockingham, if you had, and what I would do instead of running distance races, I'd say, okay, guys, you're running these Cup type cars,
right?
then get used to the cars. Don't worry about the pits. Learn how to do that later, because we're going to have a break at halfway.
Exactly.
And you do any car you want to then, but you don't have pit stops unless you got a really truly busted tire.
Right.
And save some money that way. But you could take these old Nationwide or Cup cars, which sell for a song, really.
Right.
And you take the springs out of them and those shocks.
Right.
And like you and I say, I don't even know why you need a sway bar. If you really had to do it. I'm getting a little far-fetched now, but
no, you don't.
Still.
I didn't run one. I'm Turkey Mint Chevelle. We didn't run one.
That's right. And then run crate engines.
Exactly.
You'd have so many cars, and you'd have so many new drivers come in, and out of that there would be a couple of them that would be tomorrow's Fireball and Petty and whatever it was. But we can't find those guys now because they never get up that high. The kids that are getting up to the top today are kids that have got tremendous money behind them.
Exactly.
And, some of them will be good racers, but there'll be a lot of them that you'll say, well, gee, that guy's always running 7th. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You look out there, and he's always 7th.
Right.
He's not 2nd. He's always 7th. Was he ever going to get anywhere, really? No. If you had one of those guys that had that burning desire to win, he'd be up there in the lead. He wouldn't be back there running 7th place.
Right.
And so you have to run the real danger of ending up with, out of your top 10 drivers, maybe having 7 of them that are mediocre, versus the old way where you truly had the best drivers coming in, and because the expense wasn't there like it is today.
Yep.
Well, with two of the greatest minds in racing, why couldn't the two of you guys team up and put together a series that would run just the kind of equipment you're talking about?
I'll guarantee you, if Tom Pistone and I were 25 or 30 years old today, that's exactly what we'd be doing.
Exactly. You hit it right on the head.
We'd make some of these sanctioning bodies sit and take notice.
Well,
I think these guys forget how old we are, Humpy.
Yeah. Well, you guys just sit back in the recliners and shout orders. What you need is you need your soldiers to take care of it for you.
Well, you can only shout so long over enemy lines, You got to get in there and do it yourself.
Right.
And there would be a great war when you tried to do that, but at the same time, I'm not sure that in some cases there's some. I've told this a million times. There's some 25 or 30-year-old cat out there right now. He may be listening to you. And he's going to come along and do something like that. But let me tell you what he's going to do. He's going to get a series like this up. Then he's going to combine that with what I think has got tremendous potential. And that's this off-road stadium truck racing.
Uh-huh.
Because those things, they've let the price get out of hand on those now. I'm talking about the Robbie Gordon type stuff.
Right.
But it gives the public everything they want. They're on dirt. They're sliding sideways. They wreck. The bodies come off of them. Nobody gets hurt, but it looks like it's crazy. And it's kind of throwback racing to the way Tom Pistone and his crew raced back in the 50s.
What crew?
Except it's in a different form. And, I've always said this is the first sport in history that combined mechanics and athletics. And therefore, if you look further down the line, say the next 100 years, I think there's going to be a lot of sport that does this. Combines some kind of a mechanical something with the athlete and produces a different kind of sport. And we have a different kind of sport. I mean, if somebody 150 years ago came back and saw a race, they could not believe what they were seeing. same thing's going to happen down the road, and there's going to be some young cat that's not afraid of anything, and he's going to be able to get enough money behind him, and he's going to come along and he's going to show a whole different way of doing this whole motorsports thing than we've ever seen. It's just a matter of time that it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, right now we got most sports is centered around 2.5, 3 hours, and sometimes ours gets awful long, particularly, here's a guy that ran promoted 35 600s.
600-mile races.
600 miles. Yeah. I remember many times I'd sit up there at about 400 miles saying, when is this thing going to be over? Are we home yet? I think, my God, we're going to be shortening this race a little bit.
Yeah.
I got to tell you
Humpy.
a real funny one.
In 1959, Tiger Tom should have been Rookie of the Year. What happened there? What happened with the record books? How come he never got that?
Well, we finished 6th in points. I won 2 Grand National races and 2 convertible races that year. I was way ahead of points on Richard Petty. And Bill France Senior decided that I ran someplace else that was not a sanctioned race. But Richard Petty also ran the same race I ran. It was not sanctioned. So that's when they took the... At that time, I didn't know what Rookie of the Year was anyway. I didn't know that. I'm just learning about that right now, I didn't know what...
What do you think?
Huh?
What do you think about that, Humpy? Do you think he got ripped off there or what?
Tom should have won it because, Richard was certainly not known at the time, other than being Lee's son.
Right.
It wasn't a big deal like you say Richard Petty today. Back in those days, it wasn't a big thing, but Tom sure won that thing. It's kind of like the same deal Wendell Scott got up in Jacksonville when he did win the race.
Right.
And they decided somebody else did. Buck won it. And, of course, Buck's the kind of a driver, if you told him he won something, he did.
Yep.
He's going to go home telling everybody he won.
Yep, you're right. You're right. Yep. I think that was the only driver I think I was scared of, Buck Baker. You never know what he's going to do.
Well, you
know what I mean?
He knew damn well what he was going to do. He'd do anything he needed to do.
He was the kind of a guy I knew how he was because he was like a Chicago guy. He walked up to you. Yeah, he walked up to you and hit you. He never talk. That's the kind of guy you got to watch out for. The guy that don't say nothing. When you see a guy walking up to you shooting his mouth off, he ain't nothing. You got to watch out for that guy that don't say nothing because he's the guy that's going to punch you. Isn't that right, Humpy? Huh?
That was him, if there ever was.
You're darn right that was him. He was the first guy I put over the wall when Huh?
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Tom. The only thing I was going to say is we're getting down to the last few minutes of the show, and just wanted to go over real quick. And Humpy, we didn't get a Speedway benefits update, and I wanted to get that in before the show went off, and it kind of ties in with what we were saying about making racing a little less expensive, and this is on the other end of helping the track owners and the track promoters and to keep the grassroots of racing alive at the same time. So it really kind of goes hand in hand with sort of the theme of things that we've been talking about tonight. You want to give us a little update on Speedway benefits and how things are going, and just kind of update our listeners and everybody on that?
Sure. When I left Speedway Motorsports, I started going back to short tracks again. That's always been my love, and I saw there were some real problems there that need to be addressed. So I got with my son Tripp, and we put Speedway benefits together, which basically is to represent as many short tracks as we can. We got over 300 now, and most of the top ovals and drag strips. Now we don't have or want any of the major NASCAR super speedways or the major drag strips. What we want is the run-of-the-mill, meat and potatoes, short track, whether it be Rockford, Illinois, or Carolina Speedway out in Gastonia, NC, or New Smyrna in Florida, or the Spud Speedway and right on the New Brunswick main line, and
right.
we buy stuff collectively for them, and we also sell advertising for them. So we can go to Coke and say we represent 350 tracks. You don't have to do any work. We'll monitor everything for you to make sure it's right. Also, one of the big things that we want to do is increase attendance. So I've been going to a lot of short tracks trying to figure out what the pattern is, and we just about got it figured out right now, the pattern for successful short tracks. And that is only 3, at the most 4 divisions, over 100 cars a week, start at 7:15 and end at 10:15. Anybody that's left on the track after a caution flag, you pick him up with a forklift and throw him out. But you get him moved, you get him out of the way. And also, cars that you can see real well. We saw an awful lot of cars that you can't read their number, you can't do this or that. And also, we saw an awful lot of racetracks that were under-lighted. They were lit like a softball field at a park, maybe with 60-foot candles, and they need to be 90. And put some color back in it and all that kind of stuff, and put some people back in the seats and try to get these kids back. That's the biggest thing we're working on to help these promoters. You have to get these 8 to 12 and 13-year-old kids back to the racetrack like they used to come.
Yeah.
So we've been we just announced a couple of new things. One, we announced that we're going to go into a trophy company, and we're going to save each track over 75% on their trophy buying.
Wow.
On the concessions, we've already saved tracks as much as 38%. And we're also buying T-shirts. We got a T-shirt that they have been paying last year. They've been paying $8 for. We got them a better quality T-shirt with more colors in it for $5.50. And it's the difference between going in and saying, "Sir, I want to buy 500,000 T-shirts from you instead of 500. That's the difference.
Right. Yeah.
Or rolls of toilet paper.
Yeah.
If you're a promoter, you know how important that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to have
toilet paper.
So it's working out real well for us.
Yeah. Well, great. Yeah, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and I've just been very impressed ever since the first time we had you on the show. You were on our very first show that we had last year, and was telling us about that. And I'm glad you're doing it, and I'm glad to get the update on that too, Humpy. And Tiger, what do you think about that?
What's that, Humpy?
I was asking you, Tiger, what you thought about it. What you thought about the program to save short tracks money like that?
Humpy's on the right track, but who's going to listen to us? Humpy, before I forget.
Now, if it hadn't been for Tom, we would have never gotten the Legends program off the dime, because he helped us tremendously in those days, and he became our first vice president of competition.
Right.
And so it was a tremendous help to us to get that thing going. That's been extremely successful.
Oh, yes.
I haven't been involved in it since I left the Speedway 5 years ago, but I wish him continued success.
Hey, Benny, he left me. Hey, Benny, he left me after 23 years. He left me, Benny.
He left you.
Oh, man.
Every time I see Humpy, I says, "You left me."
I know he does too.
Humpy, Lori Banks. Do you know her from Meadows of Danville?
Oh, yeah.
Meadows of Danville. Lori,
Meadows
thanks.
of Dan.
Yeah, Meadows of Dan.
Oh, yes.
She told me to say hello to you.
Well, tell her it's good to hear her and squeeze Leonard for me real tight.
Yeah, I had dinner with her at the Texas Roadhouse tonight.
Oh, that's good. That's great.
Yeah. And,
Meadows of Dan, yep.
And she said that Leonard said to say hello to you, Leonard Wood.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Right. All right. Humpy,
okay, thank you.
Hey,
I don't know what to say, but you keep telling me you're going to come back and get me.
I am, too.
When? I'm 85.
Soon.
I'm 85.
I'm 85, Humpy. When are you going to come and get me?
I guess when the pickers come back.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that.
Pickers.
I was going to mention that, and first off, I did get a note off of Twitter from Shayna Mayfield that wanted me to tell you guys that she said hello, and I've been trying to slip that in, and I haven't been able. Yeah, she wanted to tell me.
We got to get Jeremy back in the seat. We got to get him back.
Yeah, we do.
Well, we've had him on the show, and we've talked about that, and we're trying to get him and Shanna back on the show to talk about it. But yeah, we do. We need to get him back in the seat. I'm all for that too.
Just tell Jeremy tell Jeremy to shut his mouth.
You may have to hold him, Tom. Yeah,
Humpy taught me that. Shut your mouth.
We're trying to get him on the show to open his mouth.
No, that's different. That's different.
Yeah.
You don't buck NASCAR. That's the wrong thing you can do. You're not going to win. You know what I mean? And one thing, Humpy, you know that they gave me a lifetime membership for me and my wife. You know that.
Yeah.
So NASCAR's real good to me. I go anywhere with that license I got.
Yep.
Humpy, I really enjoy this. Out of the 23 years that I was working for you as a legend director, we only talked about 20 minutes. It was all faxes.
Hey guys,
is that right, Humpy?
Still communication. That was good.
Yeah. Guys, we've got about a minute and a half.
Okay, go. I'm glad you guys have me on the show.
Sorry,
Thanks.
Tom.
Thanks, Humpy.
I'm sorry I keep interrupting you, Tom, but guys, we got about a little over a minute left. I want to thank both of you for coming on tonight, and it's been a wonderful 2 hours. It's just slipped by, and either one of you, both of you, welcome back on the show anytime. Thank you so much for coming on tonight and sharing this time with us. Humpy, it was great. I appreciate it, Tom.
Okay, Hump, I'm waiting for you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Tiger. Appreciate it so much. All right, guys, that was 2 hours with two of the legends of NASCAR. That was Humpy Wheeler and Tiger Tom Pistone. And, man, it was a great thing. We're going to have to do this again sometime. It was our first special, and we want to thank both of them for coming on. Daryl, you got anything to wrap up with? You got any comments?
No, I just want to say I surely enjoyed that. I learned something. I certainly enjoyed listening to the old times of NASCAR. I wish that NASCAR.
That was reality. That was reality programming at its best, right there.
Yeah, it was like sitting around the kitchen table with the two of them. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
It was. All right, guys, we got to go. We got about 2 seconds left here. Good night, Daryl.
We'll see you on Tuesday. Good night, Benny.
Good everybody. Good night.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining the Racin Nation Report for this special broadcast of an historic reunion with Tiger Tom Pistone and Humpy Wheeler. We sure hope you've enjoyed it. And very special thanks to Snafu Seasoning for this commercial-free reunion edition of the show. Remember, Snafu Seasoning is the missing ingredient for just about everything you cook. We sincerely thank our wonderful guests for an epic adventure through the golden age of NASCAR racing. So on behalf of the entire team and crew, this is Matthew Gillett, thanking you again for your support and for tuning in. And we hope you'll be riding along with us next Tuesday night for the Racin Nation Report, exclusively on the Racin Nation Radio Network.